Yeah, I really can't emphasize enough just how big this story had become here in the United Kingdom. It's been like a storm whipping up more and more accusations and speculation. That's all really ground to a halt now with the name of the presenter, Huw Edwards, revealed overnight. However, we first learned of allegations against an unnamed BBC presenter last week. They were published in the Sun newspaper, and at the time, these allegations were, as I said, made against an unnamed presenter. They were, the Sun was claiming that the parents of a young person had come to them. They said that they'd made a complaint to the BBC that their child had been receiving payments for explicit images over a period of 3 years, claiming that that began when that young person was 17. They say that the money that was paid to this young person was in excess of $60,000, and that money went to contribute to a crack cocaine habit for that young person. And so the Sun claimed that these parents they'd made a complaint to the BBC and that they hadn't had any response, that they hadn't seen any action. So they then went to the Sun to have their story heard. Now, since then, we heard counterclaims from the young person involved in this, at the heart of these allegations, who said that any claims of illegal activity were rubbish. They said that they'd provided that information to the Sun before they went live with this story, but that they'd gone ahead anyway without including that or representing that young person's perspective. We have then had the BBC and other media outlets responding to this information live. We've seen it playing out as more and more information has been drip-fed. The police became involved, and now finally, after days of speculation and other BBC presenters saying that, look, it's not me, and all of this, I guess, mounting speculation as to who it is, we've finally had the wife of Huw Edwards come forward and on his behalf release a statement saying that, yes, he is the presenter at the heart of these allegations, and that at the moment he's not well enough to comment on them, but that he will in due time. He's currently receiving inpatient care in hospital for some serious mental health issues.
Yeah. And, you know, to your point about how this has gripped the nation, when they've learnt the name, it'll only do so more, because this is a man that has been central to so many of the country's most significant events, just the death of the Queen, King Charles's coronation recently.
Yeah, this is an incredibly significant development here in the UK, because Huw Edwards really is the face of BBC News. He's worked for the broadcaster for 40 years. He's been hosting the flagship 10 o'clock news bulletin for 20 of those years. He's, as you said, he announced the death of the Queen. He's held the nation's hand through some of the most significant moments in recent years. Whenever anything big is happening throughout the UK, Huw is there on site, and people go to him and turn to him for moments of trust. So a lot of people will be feeling a lot of shock to find out that it is this person, this face of the BBC broadcaster, that is at the centre of these allegations. But there's also been a lot of concern for Huw Edwards with the statement that was released by his wife. People feel that they know him. He's been in their lounge rooms for every night of the week for many years, and so they are concerned for his health and the state that he's in. But there's also a sense of shock that potentially an element of his private life that he would have liked to keep private has now been splashed out across the front pages here in the UK.
Yeah. As you pointed out, this young person has substantially sort of retracted what they said, saying that you know, there was nothing illegal that went on. This is the same conclusion that the police have drawn. They have now ended their investigation, have they not?
Yeah, so the police were very clear from the start that they never had embarked on a formal investigation. What they were doing was looking at the evidence that they had provided to them, and so they sought information from the BBC, from the parents of this young person, from the young person themselves, and that they were assessing all of the different claims and allegations, and that they would then decide whether or not they would undertake a formal investigation. It never got to that point. Almost a couple of minutes before Huw Edwards was named as the presenter, the Metropolitan Police released a statement saying that they had found that no illegal activity had occurred. Now, this casts doubt over the Sun's allegations that these explicit images were being purchased when the young person was 17 years old. Of course, if they were under the age of 18 here in the UK, then that would have been a crime. And so there's this, by saying that and ruling out illegal activity, that indicates that there is potentially some error in the reporting by The Sun.
Yeah. The BBC have said it will continue its investigation, and there have been other complaints against Huw Edwards since The Sun's article has come out.
Yeah, so the Metropolitan Police had asked the BBC to pause its internal investigation while it assessed the situation. Now that it has determined that there is no criminal activity detected, the BBC can now continue its own internal investigation. And so at the moment, Huw Edwards remains suspended while that investigation is ongoing. However, as you mentioned, we have learned that a BBC staff member has since come forward and said that they have received some inappropriate messages from Mr. Edwards. So I imagine that that will then be another facet of this investigation and something else the BBC will need to look into. There were a myriad of other accusations that began to mount against this presenter in the days before he was named, and so that will also be part of the investigation as the BBC looks into, I guess, what Huw Edwards' obligations are in terms of his role as a presenter for the broadcaster, and whether what he does in his private life will impact his capacity to be the face of BBC News and to do his work. So that will be something BBC will be looking into. It will also be looking into its own complaints procedures. So there was some criticism of the BBC for its slow response to this complaint. The parents of this young person came to them more than 7 weeks ago, and the presenter and senior management weren't informed about the complaint for 7 weeks. And so that wasn't until The Sun had come to them with these allegations that they escalated the complaint. So they'll be looking into that procedure. The BBC boss has said that they'll be doing a review of that. As I mentioned, in the meantime, Huw Edwards remains suspended. He said that he'll put forward his own case when he can. So that's something that we'll be waiting to hear.
Yeah, Michelle, what an extraordinary story. Thank you so much for explaining it all to us.